Hello, everybody. This is Joseph P. Farrell with news and views from the Nefarium on Thursday, January 26, 2017. The Nefarium is busy this week. If you've been watching everything in Europe and Asia and the United States and so on, there's an article that many of you sent me from RT. And I'm doing this news and views about that article because I read this thing, and then I read Pamela Geller's website where she links this article with a very short descriptive paragraph at the beginning of the article beneath a picture that I think is highly significant. All right. So I'm going to be indulging in some really high octane speculation here. I want you to bear with me as to what I think may be going on. Like all speculation, it's iffy. Time will tell. But this article is titled Stop Operation Soros, SOS, subtitled Massive Movement to Overthrow George Soros Explodes in Macedonia. Now, RT posted this on the 19th, and then Pamela Geller reposted it on January 22nd. I've linked both of those articles for you. I'll be reading primarily and extensively from the RT article, and then I want to point out something about Pamela Geller's reposting on her website that I think is highly significant because it ties in to my high octane speculation. So let's begin. The first four paragraphs of the RT article about this Stop Operation Soros Foundation reads as follows. A new initiative, Stop Operation Soros, dedicated to countering the influence of American billionaire activist George Soros, has been launched in Macedonia. In a press conference on Tuesday, the founders of the group call on all freedom-minded citizens, regardless of ethnicity or religion, to join them in the fight against one-mindedness in the civil sector, which is devised and led by George Soros, the Vaser newspaper reported. The movement says it will first focus on uncovering subversive activities by Soros-funded non-government organizations, or NGOs. According to Nikola Srebov, a columnist for pro-government news portal Kurir and co-founder of SOS, the Soros-funded NGOs have monopolized civil society in Macedonia and used their position to suppress dissenting views. Ha! Does that sound familiar, guys? Anyway, continuing. We've witnessed the takeover of the entire civil sector and its abuse and instrumentalization to meet the goals of one political party. That is unacceptable and goes beyond the principles of civic organizing, unquote, Shribov said at the press conference. Now I'm skipping toward the end of the RT article here to the last four paragraphs. A third founder of the initiative and editor-in-chief of the Republika news portal, Nenad Mirsevsky, declared that the group would work toward the de-Sorosization of Macedonia, echoing a speech made by former Prime Minister and leader of the ruling party, VMRO-DPMNE party, Nikola Gruevski, in December. In the speech, Gruevski accused foreign powers and Soros-backed organizations, guess what foreign power they might have in mind there, folks, of meddling in Macedonian politics. Opposition figures have expressed concern at the rhetoric used by Gruevski, fearing the start of a crackdown on dissent and advocacy groups. The Open Society Foundation was set up by Hungarian-born Soros between the mid-1980s to early 1990s with the stated aim of helping former Eastern Bloc countries transition from communism. However, aside from its support for progressive causes such as drug policy reform, the OSF has also been involved in political activities, and Soros publicly supported the violent overthrow of the legitimately elected government in the Ukraine during the Euromaidan revolution. This has earned him the ire of Russian authorities, which in 2015 banned Soros and his foundations as a threat to national security. Soros and his foundations have come under scrutiny elsewhere as well. In an interview with the internet portal 888.hu in December, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban said that in 2017 would bring about, quote, the extrusion of George Soros and the forces symbolized by him, unquote. Orban, and please note that phrase, the forces symbolized by him. Orban has accused Soros of undermining European borders and values. No kidding, folks. By helping facilitate the flow of refugees and asylum seekers from the Middle East and elsewhere. During a Reddit AMA Ask Me Anything, WikiLeaks' Julian Assange also blasted the organized crime and corruption reporting project funded by Soros for focusing, quote, exclusively on negative stories about Russia and former Soviet states, unquote. And that's the end of the RT article, all right? Now, I want you to look at the link of Pamela Geller on her website to this RT article, which she has linked in full, because at the top of that article, there's a picture, apparently, of a popular gathering in Macedonia to launch the anti-Soros effort. That picture says George Soros, the Black Hand, all right? And that really caught my attention because the Black Hand was the name of the Serbian secret society that included Gavrilo Princip and some of his cohort assassins who attempted and finally succeeded in assassinating the Austro-Hungarian heir apparent Archduke Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo in June of 1914, thus starting and providing the trigger that launched World War I. All right, so in other words, they're viewing George Soros in a very direct linkage to those forces that set off World War I. They're tarring him with that brush. And I couldn't help but think then, if that's the case, then maybe we're looking at something very different than simply a spontaneous uprising in Macedonia against Soros, and for that matter, in Hungary. So I want to briefly bring you back to the United States, where we've seen all the protests against the incoming Trump administration, many of which appear to have been funded, at least that's the way that some internet sites are reporting it, have been funded by the Soros organization, which certainly did have a funding channel to Black Lives Matter and other left-wing groups in the United States. Now, this brings me to something that we've been hearing on the internet in the run-up to the American elections, in particular with Dr. Steve Pieczenik, a former CIA operative and consultant, who was maintaining steadily during the American election campaign that what the Trump campaign represented was a counter coup against the neocon neoliberal forces that had been basically directing American domestic and foreign policy for the past 3 administrations. And by that, I mean the first Clinton administrations, the 2 administrations of George W. Bush, and then, of course, the 2 administrations of Barack Obama. So in other words, he was putting the Trump election and campaign into a very long historical context. And that, incidentally, is the way that I have been viewing the American election, the recent American election. So in other words, Pieczenik was arguing that Donald Trump's candidacy represented, as I argued very early on, was represented or representative of a pissed off faction within the American deep state that was looking at the policies of the last 30 years and saying, enough, this is getting us nowhere. Kissinger, as you recall, came out 3 years ago and began breaking with the Brzezinski line and saying this is a policy that we don't want to go on. Finally, even Brzezinski last year admitted that the whole policy was over. So I have to wonder then if what we're seeing now with these anti-Soros movements is actually something that's being orchestrated by that same pissed off deep state group, because Soros has so many connections with that neocon neoliberal policy that it appears to me like someone has decided to make him the target of opportunity now as a first shot in a kind of covert war, if you will, against the power structure of that neocon neoliberal group that's been dominating not only American policy, but certainly the policy of governments in the European Union, Angela Merkel, Nicolas Sarkozy, and then, of course, Francois Hollande, and so on and so forth, Matteo Renzi in Italy. So we might be looking at something, in my opinion, that's a long-term operation now, and they've settled on George Soros as the target. Now, if that's the case, this could spin out and fan out into a number of investigations of his connections, all right? And the key point here, I think, that we need to watch is the possibility, and I'm stressing it's only a possibility because all of this, folks, is complete high-octane speculation. But if that is the case, if the speculation be true, then I suspect that what we might see is domestic investigations being begun, not only in these European countries, but in the United States and Canada. If that's the case, particularly the United States with the incoming Trump administration, if that be the case, then this is a clear signal that what is happening with the Soros opposition might be, in fact, orchestrated. It might spread. It might be an international phenomenon. Now, if we really want to crawl way out onto the twig of high-octane speculation here, where the twig simply will not support the weight of the speculation, where there's not enough evidence. But if we really want to pursue that scenario to its ultimate end, its logical end, we would see Soros being brought up or charged in formal international venues like the United Nations General Assemblies, where people might give speeches about him, being brought up before the International Criminal Court, and so on and so forth. So I think this is a story. My gut intuition here, guys, is that this is a story that's not going to go away. I have the profound suspicion that the fire has been lit now in Macedonia. I think this is going to spread quickly. We've seen this fuse also being lit in Hungary. I think this is going to spread quickly to Southern Europe, and then from Southern Europe into Northern Europe. I think this whole perception of Soros as a Machiavellian orchestrator of some of these policies that are increasingly under fire in Europe is going to spread. I think it will spread to Italy. I think it's going to spread to France. I think it's going to spread to Spain. And then from Southern Europe northward into the Netherlands and Germany. All right. So this is something to watch. If I'm correct, it will spread. We will see investigations of Soros. We will see a lot of attempts to shut down his foundations, and I'm guessing that they might be successful. An important story, folks, and I want to thank everybody who sent me this story. At first, I was inclined to ignore it, but then when I saw the Geller article with that picture of the black hand with the associations to the beginnings of World War I and the maneuverings of a similar non-government organization that was being used by the Serbian government and then behind them by the Russians to begin the operations to take out Austria-Hungary, to collapse the Austrian Empire. That was also a non-government organization operation, and it resulted in World War I. So I think that there is a good possibility that Pamela Geller's intuition here is correct. We might be looking at the beginning of a profound coordinated, orchestrated effort against these NGOs. And we need to put that into the context, if you will, of the strange remarks that President Trump apparently made, and I haven't been able to verify these, but apparently made when he visited the CIA and talked about having rooms with no more columns. I think that was a message. We don't need any more fifth columns here in the United States either, and Soros would certainly qualify, in my opinion, as one of these individuals trying to create policy, domestic policy, through terror tactics, intimidation, and funding the most radical groups. So That's it for my news and views from the Nefarium. I'll see everybody on the flip side. Bye-bye, and God bless everybody.